Hello. Welcome to Inside the London podcast, The Knowledge Exchange. My name is Patrick. I'm your host. In today's episode, we are joined by Steph Rogers, a scientist working at the cutting edge of sustainable biology and biotech. I Bet a Bugs Limited, Stephanie is helping to turn research innovation into scalable solutions for food systems and circular economy. Welcome, Stephanie.
Thank you very much for having me.
What we have set out for you is a series of challenges, and we want you to be as honest as possible. This is ongoing conversation between employers, educators, and students. And the point of this conversation is to more collaboration. So our first challenge is between bridging theory and practice. You have worked on a cutting edge of sustainable biology and scalable solutions for food systems and circular economy, as already mentioned. When you meet recent graduates in biological sciences or biotech, do you feel any truly are ready to apply what they've learned in a practical commercial environment?
So, somewhat, I would say. University is really good at teaching attention to detail. And this is crucial to untangling problems and investigating new ideas, sort of taking everything into consideration and really deep diving. What I feel it doesn't teach is pace and balancing perfectionism with fast communication of results that you need in an industry to steer projects. So academia is slow and the output is perfect reports, but that's not always necessary in industry. Industry needs much quicker turnarounds when innovating to faster approach results, like, for example, in my field, a minimum viable product, where nothing is quite perfect yet, but it's just about functions, and that's a much better starting point than fully exploring every question from scratch to the nth degree. This can be done through things like pilots and rangefinders. Often these are back to back, but this really is not a natural focus for academics. Also, another thing that I wish that they taught was the commercial or financial impacts instead of just this pure curiosity. Um, and I feel that graduates do need to self-discipline themselves to stay on track with certain important, impactful commercial questions and not go down rabbit holes. And in order to do this, I feel that people need to be able to zoom out on system rather than exploring every small detail, because the details don't always stay relevant. Products change, focuses change. So yeah, to me, it's about putting perfectionism aside and zooming out. But I do feel that graduates are really up to date when they're fresh out of university on scientific advancements, and they can really freshen up companies' knowledge.
I'm going to go back to something you said earlier, because there's a question related to, going to call it cross-pollination from different industries. It's in which, perhaps a multidisciplinary approach from science and business could help, meet the two groups and somehow collaborate rather than just being completely separated until they meet at the workplace. And I go back to this, but the next question is still related, but it's about standing out in a very crowded graduate market. It's very competitive, especially post-COVID. Firms are letting off people, especially in tech. There are many people that study biology, but working on applied solutions such as, in your case, insect mass rearing or sustainable feed is very niche. What makes a candidate to stand out for you? How much does the role-specific relevance, for example, experience particular ecosystems or field systems, matter to you versus more general strengths like adaptability, readiness for different work environments? Your take.
Okay, yeah. So relevant experience versus those kind of softer skills. I mean, both are hugely important in my field. If we're hiring a biologist, we're really interested in people who have worked in animal systems, for example. So these might be people with husbandry skills. If someone's handled animals before, they'll have a really good understanding of natural variance and noise in data, understanding that they might need a few more repeats because the world is stochastic and there is noise in biology. Biology doesn't always do what you want it to. These people are often not disgusted by animals and working with animals. There is this problem sometimes people come in and they don't quite know what they're getting themselves in for. But the fact that certain people come back for more is very telling to me, in terms of knowing that that person's a good fit. But also, if they've worked with animals before, they might have a vaster understanding of our animals. And if some concepts of their biology are familiar, then they'll understand it faster, and they'll bring new and often relevant perspectives from other animals to our animals. Some other relevant experience that is a immediate tick in our industry is working with industrial equipment. And that's not just to say that they know how to use these huge scale pieces, but it's about knowing how to follow standard operational procedures and how to deal with things that might be quite dangerous in a good health and safety approach. However, so many skills are transferable. So someone might come from a completely different industry with different experience that's not as relevant, but they might be really good at report writing and presenting those results. They might be good at designing trials and protocol writing. They might be good at collaborating with teams, or my favorite, creativity. For me, companies, especially startups, they change so rapidly, and what might have perfect relevance today might lose relevance over time. So people really need to learn how to embrace change and thrive in it.
That's great. So you emphasize adaptability as one of those skills, right? This is what I'm getting.
Absolutely. I mean, in my environment, I've worked in lots of different startups. Adaptability is key. It's that being comfortable with having the rug pulled from underneath you and jumping on a different way of doing something, or jumping on a different project, putting that project aside because the business has realized that we need to go in a completely different direction. It's about sort of swallowing that and moving quickly, and then that is going to help you in your position to move forward.
So in a sense, brings us to our third challenge, which is connected, because many of that stuff can be taught. Some of it cannot be taught. Students often leave university very strong in theory, already mentioned, especially in sciences. They're on top of things, innovations, and applied science, like yours, demands rapid experimentations, prototyping, working with living systems at scale. What real skills do you wish universities focus on more to prepare young scientists for industries like the one you work in, food innovations and biotech?
Problem solving multi-factor issues is a big one for me. That's my more academic answer. And I guess it's often covered at uni, but more on the later years, masters and things like that. But it's that zooming out again. Again, it's pace and letting go of perfectionism. We touched on that earlier.
Hmm.
Perfectionism is really celebrated at uni. It gets you good grades, but you really have to speed up. Sometimes making changes in what you're doing based on observation rather than data, which can be scary for some people. It can be sending reports that aren't perfectly structured and perfectly worded. It's getting it out there and then moving on. Yeah, I understand that letting go of perfection is really different for different people, different personality types. I know I needed to be really intentional about it. It's about, yeah, stepping back and asking what are we really doing here? What's the company mission? How do we move forward? It's that bigger picture. It's adapting to change, as we said earlier, but also I really wish that universities put more focus on collaboration and conflict resolution. So the technical is easy once you learn it, but people are all so different, and you have to learn how to work with each other and how to understand each other to really maximize your efficiency.
So, as a quick follow-up, but it's something we tend to sort of miss, especially at the importance of failure, right? Because you talk about perfectionism,
Mm.
but that cannot be achieved without the failure, right? So without the failure, you don't build resilience. Without the resilience, you can't achieve the perfections, which is the sort of the utopian aim, right? But so
Yeah.
how important do you think the resilience is to have that, the graduate that comes in but has that built-in resilience? Is that important to you?
Yeah, I think it is important to me. What I try and teach people when they come on board to my teams is be bold and make mistakes, because you're going to learn from them. Just be honest about it. Because the more you engage and push yourself, and yeah, you're open to trying new things and you're open to failure, always try and do your best, try and succeed. But that will help you think outside of the box. And at the end of the day, it's going to make everyone better at problem solving. It's like creativity, being open to be creative, try out new things, and own up to it if you get it wrong. move forward together.
Great. So that is perfect segue to our next challenge, which is the finding the right global partners. Now, global in a sense that we already touched on it. I want to go back to it in this question. Something with the startups, you can't do science, but of course the skills with the MVPs and problem solving, the creating value propositions. It's something I suppose it's not taught. Young work touches on agriculture, sustainability, engineering, animal nutrition. There's a lot of things in it, right? It requires a lot of collaboration across different disciplines, across countries, sectors. Now, if you were in a position to design a perfect partnership, right? Think of like a perfect partnership between universities and industry in your field, what would like to you? What would it look like to you?
Yeah. So I believe that it takes between a month to a quarter before students know a system enough to start unpicking it. And I think that's where the fun comes, right? So I would design a partnership that gave students this time to learn a system and start being creative with it, but also a chance to experience multiple sides of the business. This might be biology and engineering. It might be working with products and, iterating, doing things like that. But it might also be working with an industrial company and also their stakeholder. So perhaps split a year, 6 months, 6 months. Stakeholders can be a wide variety of things. So it might be a direct client. For example, Better Bugs, the company that I work for at the moment, we are rearing black soldier flies, which are used to feed animals. So, for example, in the UK, fish farms.
Hmm.
So, it might be about working for Better Bugs and learning how they cultivate these insects, but also the fish farms that are feeding these insects to the fish, what they're actually looking for, so what matters to them. We sell the eggs to other farmers who then take those and rear them up on their food waste. So it's a circular economy. It's cleaning up food waste to then produce more protein from inedible to edible. So it might be about working with those BSF farmers who might need a certain product format. Maybe they need an egg, maybe they need a little neonate, maybe they need a little bit of an older insect, but getting the two sides of the story. It might also be working with a different stakeholder. So, for example, in field studies, I worked for a company called Oxitec. They created genetically modified mosquitoes who were used to combat malaria. So these genetically modified insects would be released into the wild and they would breed with the wild types. And then over time, their progeny would not survive, or the females would not survive. They are the biting insects. So this would drive down malaria cases. What a student could do is they could work at Oxitec, how do we create these genetically modified mosquitoes? How do we ensure that this is a safe technology? And then also do a study in the field. Okay, what are these mosquitoes experiencing? What's the difference between the lab and the natural world that they'd be released into? What's the impact? What is the social impact? What is the population impact? There's so many different ways that you can really broaden the scope of a student's mind frame in terms of understanding an industry and the real meaning behind it. It's not just a job, it's like, what is the meaning behind it? It might also be an investor stakeholder as well. It could be 6 months in an industry and then 6 months working with investors to understand what are they looking for when they're investing in a company? What can you drive that makes that company more valuable?
Yeah. So it's just wonder how much also brings us to the fifth challenge, really. It's, have you noticed, the shift in the young scientists and how they value their careers? Are they more driven by purpose, like sustainable food and planetary health, compared to previous generations of biotech?
Because of COVID.
Because of, post-pandemic, last 5 years, we've seen a lot of changes across how people work, the perspective of the world. I'm just wondering if there's also shift in the post-pandemic in young scientists and how they value their career. What do they value nowadays?
Well, I think it certainly got us all talking about it, didn't
Yeah.
it? It showed us that we can break the mold very quickly as well, but it also allowed people to stop and think about what's important to them and witness that global change and observe the impact that it has on people and what it had on the planet. I do think that generally young people are more driven by sustainability. I think that's a cultural thing, but it's also because they have more of the future ahead of them. And also the dangers of climate change have already been showing real world effects. So yeah, I do think that there's a shift towards it. I think the younger generations are going to have a large impact and are leading on that kind of mind frame. I think sadly, recently, war and planetary uncertainty has removed some focus on sustainability. I think a lot of people are defaulting to the shorter term survival, understandably. But for me, this is even more of a reason to drive what's important and to be a voice for it. So, yeah, I think that there is a general younger generational shift, but I think that we do need to refocus on it.
No, it's the point of this podcast is to bring, work like yours and the company you work for into the spotlight. Because as you say, we tend to default into short termism, which is a very human thing to do, especially with all things going on post pandemic, the geopolitical situation, and so forth. Which brings me to sort of another question. Challenge 6, return on investment. Things are changing. Focusing on research is even more important. From an employer's perspective, what is the real return on investment of research experience? Especially, again, we talked about the cross-disciplinary or field-based research. For someone's entering one of those industries, like in your case, sustainable protein. How does that research background show up in employability, innovation, or just practical problem solving?
Yeah. So I think in the current structure of students going off and spending a year in industry, the research experience that they gain, it opens up scientist positions. So oftentimes these are more senior than graduate level positions. So this is because often the graduate level positions focus on the sort of day-to-day running of operations. Whereas if you've got more experience in industry and performing trials and tests and R&D and all of the rest of that, this can train people in asking the right questions, but also engaging in research and innovation tasks like the designing of those trials from kind of scratch and from those questions. People can also bring ideas from other operations, which is hugely beneficial. And yeah, companies get bogged down in the way they've always done things. So bringing in fresh ideas and fresh new perspectives from other companies rather than just your sort of primary literature studies at university, you can bring new ideas, but it's important to always be open to the fact that there's hardly ever one best way of doing things. So, yeah, go out, get these research experience, aim high, go for the scientist level positions, but also be humble. The fact that when you go into the company, they might do things different to what you've experienced before, but that might be also their best way of doing things. Every system is different.
Great insight. This is perfect because our final question is not a question to you, it's the question you'd like to ask. Imagine the next guest, a person X or Y, is going to be from university. And that person is it's a course director. What question can you ask them? Of course, we're going to be applied science. So let's assume the person is from the scientific background. We just talked about all the things you think universities should be doing, more incorporating with industries. What question would you ask them?
Ooh.
You can be as bold, as honest. This is the point of this, is to, talk, the universities and employers to talk. So anything.
Yeah. I guess if it was specifically someone who was a course director at university, a question could be, are you preparing your students for academia or are you preparing your students for both industry and academia? Is there a focus there? As a more general question to speakers, and something that I just like asking people in general,
Hmm.
is what's the most positively impactful thing you've learned at work which has affected your home life as well? Because, we do so much personal development and not a lot of people reflect on how that affects us as a person, not just an employee. So yeah, what is that biggest impact that it's had on who you are outside of work?
This is perfect. We want to have a list of questions, and we have people coming from industries all across. So this was great. That's it. Thank you very much, Stephanie. This was Inside the London, the Knowledge Exchange. Huge thank you again to Stephanie for sharing her insights. If you enjoyed this conversation, follow us on your favorite podcast platform. We've got it on YouTube, we've got it on LinkedIn, Vimeo, and also we've got our own website. I'm Matching, and thank you for listening. Join us next time as we continue to exchange knowledge with leaders shaping the future. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you very much, Matik.
Thank you. Thank you.